Okay, so we all know the story of Apollo 11, right? It's one of the most epic moments in human history. But here's the thing, for every story we think we know, there's always a detail we've missed. And today, we're going to look at that moon landing from a totally different perspective. The perspective of the one guy who got so close, but is almost always forgotten.
So, I've got a question for you. You know the first two guys who walked on the moon, but do you know the third? It sounds simple, but honestly, most of us probably can't answer that. We rightly celebrate the two pioneers who left their boot prints in that moon dust, but there was someone else, a third astronaut who was absolutely critical to the mission's success, and whose story, well, it's arguably even more mind-bending.
So let's start with what we all know, the stuff we learned in school. The names that became legendary pretty much overnight, on July 20th, 1969.
And of course, those names are Neil Armstrong, the very first person to step on another world, and Buzz Aldrin, who was right behind him. I mean, their names are basically synonymous with the moon at this point. They were the faces of the mission, the heroes making history with every single step they took.
But see, Apollo 11 wasn't a two-man show. It was a three-man crew. And this is where our story really kicks off, with the name you might not recognize.
That name is Michael Collins. He flew that same 250,000 miles from Earth. He was just as vital to making the whole thing work. But his role was profoundly different. While his buddies were making history down on the lunar surface, he had a different and maybe even more daunting job. He had to wait.
So, let's break down how this worked. Armstrong and Aldrin, they took the lunar module, the Eagle, and went down to the surface. But Michael Collins, he stayed behind in the command module, the Columbia. You can think of it as the main mothership. His entire job was just to orbit the moon all by himself and keep their ride home safe and sound. I mean, think about it. He was their only ticket back.
So as his crewmates were exploring a brand new world together, Michael Collins was entering the state of incredible isolation, something no human had ever experienced before.
And I don't just mean alone in a separate spaceship. He was alone in a way that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. For hours and hours, his whole world was just the silent, gray rock below him and the endless black of space.
So just how long was he in this situation? Well, each orbit, just one trip around the moon, took 2 full hours. Can you even imagine that? 2 hours of just circling, waiting, checking systems, all alone with the fate of the entire mission resting completely on his shoulders.
And get this, every single 2-hour loop, his path took him behind the moon to the side that never, ever faces Earth, the far side. And as he drifted into that shadow, something pretty incredible happened.
This trip into the lunar shadow would end up earning him this unique, really powerful title, one that just speaks volumes about the psychological weight of his mission.
Every signal was cut. As the massive body of the moon slid between him and his home planet, all communication with Earth just stopped. He was plunged into total radio silence.
And this is the part that just gets me. He couldn't talk to Mission Control in Houston. He couldn't even talk to Neil and Buzz, who were just about 60 miles below him on the surface. For 48 minutes, nearly an hour of every single orbit, he was completely cut off from every other human being in the entire universe.
He was, at that moment, the most alone person in the entire universe. Just think about that for a second. Every other human being that had ever lived was either on that tiny blue dot in his window or on the surface of the moon below him, and he was completely, utterly separated from all of them.
And that's how he got that incredible title, the loneliest man in history. But here's the wild part. He didn't feel lonely. He later wrote that he felt aware, confident, even triumphant. It's this amazing contrast between our perception of his isolation and his own experience of it.
Michael Collins came back a hero, no doubt, right alongside his crewmates. But his particular story, the story of that silent, solitary watch, it often gets lost in the big headlines.
You know, you could make a pretty strong case that his job was the most stressful one on the entire mission. Why? Because if that one single engine on the lunar lander failed to fire, there was no backup, no rescue plan. Armstrong and Aldrin would be stranded forever, and Collins would have to fly all the way back to Earth for 3 days, completely alone. He was carrying that massive, massive psychological weight, and yet, he's the astronaut we tend to forget.
You know, his story is such a powerful reminder. Behind every huge achievement, there are always these unsung heroes, right? The people who played a critical part but didn't end up in the spotlight. So it makes you think, every great story has an unsung hero. Who comes to your mind?